I've seen both of you in other appearances. I follow your Twitter feed very closely. I just want to hear what's on your mind, General McCaffrey.
Well, in 50 years of dealing with national security issues, I've never seen anything like this. I worked in both Democratic and Republican White Houses on the national security issues. Nicole, what is the chance, from your experience, that the intelligence agency would be reporting that the GRU was putting out a bounty on U.S. soldiers? It was widely disseminated. It was the subject of an NSC meeting of the policy group, and that the president made, as far as I can tell, 5 phone calls to Putin, and nobody came in and said, Mr. President, this guy's trying to murder your soldiers. Obviously, he knew about it. There's no question in my mind. And he was so keen on being subservient to Russian and Putin interests for whatever reason, trying to get them to join the G7, that he took no action. Normally, when our troops get threatened in a battle zone like Afghanistan, we tell the Intel guys to find those who are threatening us, and we go kill them. That should have been the first response, followed by a diplomatic approach to the Russians, telling them to knock it off. So I think it's shocking.
General McCaffrey, I don't want to let that go. I don't want to keep going. I mean, what are the chances? The chances are 0. And I worked for a president who advocated policies that were plenty controversial, and he will live with that legacy till the end of time. But any threat to American soldiers anywhere, any threat to Americans anywhere was brought to him at any point, whether it was a tip, whether it was corroborated, whether it was about to be realized. What is the dysfunction? If they have to, here's the problem with the White House response. Either they shield him from any credible leads, and as you said, this was credible enough that we alerted the British. They convened a deputies, and it sounds like a principals meeting in the West Wing of the White House. And the New York Times is reporting they ran the money down. They already found the money. That's usually the end of the investigation. So it would suggest that the CIA, the Pentagon, the State Department, if the British have been alerted, and maybe in the FBI, Adam Goldman just said they're investigating it like a crime. They all know, and either the president can't handle the truth, or he knew and was still courting Vladimir Putin. What does that say about Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin?
It's actually inexplicable. I don't think the Russians can believe their eyes and ears, that they've got somebody acting to further their interests, embracing them in public, attacking their European Union, NATO adversaries for them. It's simply astonishing. It's not to be understood. 20 years from now, the Russians, by the way, when he's out of office, the Russians will out him, and they'll say, here's how we were able to influence Trump. But for now, what we've got on the face of it is someone who refuses to confront Russian adversarial efforts, which include killing our troops. So we got a problem. Congress's oversight function, where were they? What did Secretary Esper tell the CENTCOM commander? Why didn't the CIA run their own covert operation to bag some of these Russians in Afghanistan? Why didn't we jam the bank accounts? These people bear a heavy responsibility. Our national security process is broken.
Brett McGurk, you were part of that national security process. I imagine it pains you to hear that, but do you agree?
I couldn't agree more. Look, this story is just sickening at so many levels. If you think about it from the vantage point of our men and women over there in Afghanistan, I spent a good deal of my professional career in war zones with these men and women. And there's an assumption that the commander-in-chief, they're under his command and that he'll also be under his care. And if something is in the presidential daily brief, that means it is of significant import to be before the president. He's been briefed on it. He knows about it. And it is presumed that he will take action. And here, it's not just the president. Maybe he didn't know, he didn't do anything. He spoke with Putin, as General McCaffrey just said, 5 or 6 times after he knew the information. Not only did he speak with him, he invited him back into the G7. So this is totally inexplicable. But there's a larger point, and it gets to the PDB. The PDB is the one of the most important documents in the world, one of the most rigorously constructed documents in the world. The president not only was getting this information earlier this year, but in January and February, according to the Washington Post, there's a dozen warnings about the pandemic coming out of China.
Right.
And the president at that time was talking to Xi Jinping, saying everything's fine. This is a president that is a voracious consumer of Fox and Friends in the morning, but is not a voracious consumer of the intelligence that is being presented to him to keep our country and our personnel safe. We're in deep trouble here, and this is just another dot in the mosaic. You always say it can't get worse. This story is unbelievable. Just final point, I was an NSC senior director. It's my job to consume intelligence. I spend an hour every morning doing that. And you ask yourself in that position, what do I know after reading this? Who needs to know? And did I tell them? And if this is in the book, Russia has a change of policy to target our troops and put bounties on our troops. The president needs to know. Everybody, General McCaffrey could not be more right. The Secretary of Defense, the National Security Advisor, the Chief of Staff, everybody reading that intelligence needs to be batting down the door of the Oval to say, Mr. President, we have a problem. And the next time you speak with Vladimir Putin, you need to say something about it.
Brett, which part of this endangers U.S. troops more? The fact that this is where that the Russians are so brazen that they're, one, transferring money from GRU-linked accounts to the Taliban, not taking more care to hide the money. They certainly must know we'd go looking for it. Or that the Russians now know that Trump, when it is known, when it is revealed that Russians paid the Taliban to slaughter U.S. soldiers, did nothing.
Well, it's both. And even the fact that now that this is out, the president still has not. It's unbelievable. The president has not once said, I'm going to get to the bottom of this. I'm going to make sure my people are protected, and I'm going to take action to protect my people. He acts like this is all about him. It's not all about him. It's about our men and women who are overseas. It's about the protection of our country. So I agree with General McCaffrey. Look, I have negotiated with the Russians. I've sat across from the table with them on very difficult issues such as Syria, where you literally say, if you cross this line, we will kill you. OK, that's kind of the conversation. But the Russians know, any diplomat who's facing off against the Russians, they know on the other side of the table that the president does not have the back of our diplomats. He does not have the back of our soldiers, because Putin can get on the phone and Trump will change his mind in a moment. Every world leader knows this. Erdogan, Xi Jinping. It has put our country at risk. And, there's 100-something days in election. There's almost 7 months until we may have a new president. A lot can happen over these 7 months. Mm-hmm. We're in the middle of a public health crisis, an economic crisis, a racial justice crisis. The one thing we don't have is an international security crisis. But I would anticipate one is coming. And this White House and this president is so dysfunctional, they are not ready to handle it. It's just an incredibly serious moment in our country. And this is just one dot in the mosaic of everything. I mean, Nicole, we've been talking about it for a couple of years since I came out of the Trump administration. Yeah. It's just one more piece of the puzzle.
I want to get both of you on one more question. Donald Trump likened the intelligence community to Nazis after he was elected, before he was inaugurated. Then he went after Jim Comey because he refused to drop the Flynn investigation. Then he smeared Andy McCabe, the deputy director of the FBI, I guess because his wife had the audacity to run for office. Then he went after the 17 State Department and career diplomats who testified in the impeachment trial. He extorted a foreign leader. None of this elicited a peep, nothing from any Republican other than Mitt Romney. And now we've got, according to the New York Times, 3 American soldiers who lost their lives because Russians paid bounties to Taliban militants. Trump was briefed on it and did nothing. Is the Republican Party still a party, General McCaffrey?
Well, normally I try and evade, strictly partisan issues. I know a lot of these senators in particular who are Republicans and admire them. They're just good people. Rob Portman, certainly an example, and others. And it absolutely is mystifying to me that they're remaining silent in the face of not just Mr. Trump's absolute lack of character, but also actions that he's taking that endanger the United States. I mean, the whole notion of yanking a third of our troops out of Germany in an obvious tiff over Angela Merkel refusing to come to his G7 meeting because the Russians will be there. It's just amazing. He takes actions in public that are favorable to our adversaries. He's an impulsive, crude, ignorant man when it comes to these national security issues. And by the way, that's not really a new finding. Helsinki, to me, was the turning point. When I looked at, I've worked with the CIA for 30 years. These are some of the smartest people in our government. They're dedicated. They're brave. They get killed overseas all the time, to include in Afghanistan. And for him to publicly disown his own loyal, talented public servants is astonishing. We are in trouble.
Brett McGurk, I'll give you the last word. I mean, you quit over something that the Republicans really were pretty quiet about. It was Donald Trump's actions in Syria. I think Secretary Mattis also walked away over a policy disagreement that resulted in grave danger and the death of our allies, the Kurds. I mean, are you surprised that there isn't a political party on the right that stands for the men and women of the national security agencies, like the military, like the CIA, who can't speak out for themselves?
I mean, Nicole, I served in the Bush White House for 4 years, and second term, President Bush at one point was down to 28% approval.
I remember.
There's a lot of partisanship. We never had serious briefings about intelligence to one political party. So, maybe it was a different time. I want to be optimistic and say it's not. Liz Cheney today came out with a very strong statement. What any American leader should say: we're going to get to the bottom of this. We're going to protect our people. If this is true, there will be consequences. That should not be hard to say. So I certainly hope Republican members say that. I hope the president says it. But I just agree with General McCrathie. We're in trouble. It's not just this story. It's the fact that this president is not doing his job, the first job of the president to keep our country and our people safe.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.